information on your opponents for free. About the only reason I could see that any deck would not run a Gitaxian Probe would be that you want to be able to see what your opening hand is better. You don't want to have to know how you're rolling, but partial pairs if you're playing in like paper or something. Like I just don't understand why people don't play this card. It's just 2 mana for a card that turns all the top deck tutors most decks already play in the hand tutors. But the only difference being you don't know what other card you might have if you just have to cantrip it out in an opening hand where you need to dig for something. I don't know. I don't know why people don't play it. I guess the 2 damage is just horrible. I mean, I have no clue. Ponder is slightly better though. Ponder lets you see 3, and then if you don't like your 3, you get to shuffle your deck. So it's another shuffle effect, which is incredibly strong. It basically lets you get to choose between 4 cards in a way. With fetch lands, it's very easy to grab a card you want, dump the 2 below. Kind of the same way with Brainstorm. You don't get the same card quality as to which you can just dump the bad cards out of your hand. But if you only see one you want, it's very easy to ponder and fetch away the stuff below it. If it's your opening hand and you want to have a turn 1 play, there's almost nothing better you'd want to see than something like a ponder. Lets you get whatever your hand is missing. So in that vein, it's almost better than drawing any individual good card because you can make it the card you wanted. With the number of fetches we play, we're probably going to fetch after, and we're gonna start crafting an incredibly good hand from the word go. Brainstorm does the same thing, but even better because of, as the mentioned, card quality. Being instant speed, so I can use it at value when I think I need to hold up a Spell Pierce or something early. It's just a very, very strong card. But it's not as good as Sensei's Top, because Sensei's Top can do this card selection thing with fetch lands all day long, all by itself. It does the same thing Gitaxian Probe in making your top deck tutors free into hand tutors. And in addition to this, it is part of one of the easiest and most efficient to pull off combos in Commander, which is Sensei's Divining Top, Ethereum Sculptor. This could be replaced by many different cards. You can play Voltaic Key, Cloud Key, or Helm of Awakening. I don't like Helm of Awakening as much because it lets your opponents who have good combo decks get first action on it, kind of similar to a Howling Mine, which is really bad. It's slightly better for the deck since it's literally like a Goblin Electromancer and this guy like stapled together. But I really hate the idea of passing that out to someone else and then having them beat my ass in with it since they get first take on it. But Helm of Awakening is a very strong card. Don't get me wrong. You would never be wrong for playing it. It's just I like this better. The Cloud Key costs 3, and this guy only costs 2. He's a creature, which I guess isn't that good because most of my deck is blanked the creature removal. But I think I'm more okay with that than I am having to pay an extra mana or giving my opponents the same advantage I have. So, but yeah. That, and then this is instant win because you have Infinite Storm, you draw your whole deck, you always have enough mana at this point, you have Infinite Storm. Even if your deck is getting low and you've played a long game, this may be the most efficient way to build Storm, since you can essentially do it for free. You don't have to use your big draw spells to eat through what's left in your deck because you're just trying to build Storm. The Future Sight on itself is insanely powerful in a deck like this because much like your real effects or anything else, it is a gas card. And not only is it a gas card, it is a gas card that just gives you as much gas as you can pay for. So when you get lots and lots of mana, this says just keep going. Play cards until you can't play cards. Or a counterspell is sitting on top or something. And as soon as you hit a tutor, what do you think you do when you see a tutor on top with your Future Sight? You find your top, and what do you think after that? It's now 1 mana to draw a card, and you can draw as many as you want. You can look at the board state, see what the best number is, and then as soon as you hit another tutor or something good, you just go to Ethereum Sculptor and you just win. Even if you are completely tapped out making that play, you will just draw your whole deck and win from 0. That combo is very, very good. I heard someone say, I do not know why he plays Future Sight. I think he pitched it to Mind Over Matter once or something like that. Future Sight is insanely powerful. Like, if you can land this thing, this is like the kind of card where you go, okay, kill my Future Sight, or when it boards, I'm just going to beat your face in. It's similar to Mana Reflection in that vein, except it costs 1 less. This is very, very good. It's hard to lose with an active Future Sight. I mean, you're probably going to win as soon as you get open mana again. You'd have to get fairly unlucky, and you'd have to already have been fairly unlucky to make your line just drop Future Sight. But, I mean, yeah, you get it in play, you're killing people. The only bad thing about it is it costs 5. That's the only drawback. I mean, and if it costs like 4 or less, it would just be so obscenely broken, then I would definitely still play it, but yeah. Weakest tutor here at 1 is Personal Tutor because it cannot hit instants. It's sorcery speed. It's in fact barely playable. It's not super good, but it's better than anything else we can play. We like our tutor density. We like converted mana cost 1 tutors. There are very powerful sorceries in this deck. It cannot hit ad nauseam, but it does hit Recurring Insight. It does hit your Time Spiral, which are your other big refills. It can hit your Mind Desire, so it'll let you win in that way. It cannot go grab your Turnabout, which is annoying. It cannot go grab your High Tide, which is very annoying. But it can go grab Yawgmoth's Will, so that's very good. It can go grab Wheel of Fortune. This is very good. You know, so it's not as good as the other ones for sure, but it's definitely playable. Definitely more playable than any other card, I think. Mystical Tutor is just the sauce. It is way better than this. Way better than the Personal Tutor. You cast it at instant speed. You can get every good card in the deck other than your Soul Ring and Mana Crypt and Lion's Eye Diamond or something like that. Or maybe even Gilded Lotus, depending on the situation. But yeah, other than that, it pretty much gets everything this deck wants. Everything but the artifacts. I mean, you can't get an Ethereal Sculptor atop. You know, there's a reason it's not as good as the Black Tutors. But it's still the sauce, and you always want to draw it. Imperial is still slightly better because we do play Future Top combo. We do want to open a Soul Ring sometimes to cast an open-handed ad nauseam or Recurring Insight very fast. We do want to grab High Tide when we have that Time Spiral in our hand and lots of islands. When we couldn't with that Personal Tutor. It's just the versatility this card gives is insane. And in a Storm deck, cards like these, they're actually better. Like, one of the things I heard one of my buddies say once about tutors was, well, if you were lucky, a tutor would never be good because if you just drew the correct spell by pure luck, then you wouldn't need the tutor. And my argument against that is absolutely and completely false. Because when you're using something like Lion's Eye Diamond, you can actually create more mana by casting tutors and going into Yawgwill or something like that when you're trying to do one of these really fast lines when people all tap out and you just go, yeah, this is a good metagame. They probably don't have Force of Will in their hand. If I go all in now, they will lose if they don't have it, you know. I only see, 13 cards in their hand total. I don't think they've got them. But other than that, like, first of all, you're never just going to top deck every card you want, because then you're already playing Vampiric Tutor, right? You're playing it every turn for 0. I mean, from the command zone. Like, that's what you're doing. That's why that argument is ridiculous in the first place. But this is better than a Soul Ring in the opening hand, because it is a Soul Ring if you want one. But if you don't need a Soul Ring and you need a High Tide, then it's still a High Tide. Even better, when we cast Yawgmoth's Will, we're going to get the exact card we want yet again off the top of the deck. That's the reason, part of the reason these cantrips are essential in this build. You can't just skip them because you mess up the odds of being able to jump to your top deck. Frantic Search is a similar card. In addition, if you're already on your High Tide turn, it is a mana ritual top deck tutor grabber, as well as filter to feed, something like a Yawgmoth's Will later. The synergy between the cards is insanely good, and the synergy we're getting is with cards that are already broken, like Soul Ring and tutors. That one guy in the ban list thread was talking about no one builds around things like Soul Ring and broken tutors. Well, that's just not true. The best decks do that. That's what makes them good, that they've built around these broken cards. I mean, just the same way you build around, Edric Spymaster of Trest. He's very good, and he makes a very good deck. This deck is building around things like Vampiric Tutor, because they're even fucking better. But, yeah, 2-drops. Snapcaster Mage. Counterspell when you need it, tutor when you need it. Always slightly more cost than whatever it would have been, but that's fine by me, because the counterspell is still surprise, especially in a known metagame. You can hit Tendrils again or something like that when you're missing your Yawgwill. You can flashback a Turnabout or something like that with it, which is incredibly important. Flashback a High Tide before you Turnabout, just depending on board state. Yeah. Recursion is good, especially when it's cheap. Cyclonic Rift. Always castable 2 mana, good defensive card. Can overload it to get you out of situations where the board has become too ridiculous for you to handle. Can pass on it in a very control-y, grindy game when some problem permanent has locked you out. Craft into a force or something with your big draw spell. maybe a longer grindy game, just blow it all out at the right before your turn and tell them, you know, you have to use your counter spell and give me, you know, this tempo and mana so I can answer this permanent and then sneak in a win. Or you get all your shit blown back, and now I still have open mana to answer your counter spell because I just stopped one layer of protection. It's kind of weird to think about it like that, but let's just say it's one of those cards when you're packing lots of tutors, it gets you out of so many situations that no other card could, that you just play it. And the best part is when you draw into it, it's never bad because it's just 2 mana bounce. 2 mana bounce isn't bad. Muddle. Muddle's very strong because 2 mana counterspell. Instant sorcery is kind of not that great compared to countering anything, but I mean it's something. But it's also a tutor for anything in your 2-drops, which means your reman, which means your mana drain early, your grape shot, demonic tutor if you want a 5 mana anything in the deck, which is fairly inefficient, but it's, you know, used quite a bit. If you just simply need a mana rock because you want to go faster, you can grab that. If you want a Cabal Ritual, you know, to accelerate out, you can get that. It's okay. It's a card that's been better for me in a lot of other decks. I mean, I don't like it as defensive because it's double blue in its cost. But it is fairly good at answering other players' good spells when it's just sitting in my hand and I don't even need it, and I'm saving it for maybe if I want to tutor something. Or, you know, if I want to make a mana drain play because someone else took a strong start, that's one of the times it's been incredibly good. It gets my Ethereal Sculptor so it can tutor into my combo. You take a little tempo to get a card that's not really the exact cards we typically need to tutor for, but it's still been strong enough that I don't think anything else is just better. Just its versatility makes it never bad. It's never something that amazes me, but it's never something that's been bad, so... Counterspell is always good. I think this is auto-clue in most blue decks. Mana Drain is even better. I don't even think I have to explain why Mana Drain is a good card. You can tutor it when you need mana, you can tutor it when you need control, and you can tutor it when you need both. It's an amazing card to open hand. It's one of those cards where if someone else opens with this stupid mana rock like Soul Ring, and you open hand your Mana Drain and like one of your big draw spells, like a Recurring Insight or Ad Nauseam, it's one of the ways you just can pop like a turn 3 Ad Nauseam or a Recurring Insight on turn with extra open mana still, like 1 or 2, and then you can just drop things behind it, and then if you didn't win on that turn, then by turn 4 there's no way they're not getting blown out. Incredibly powerful. Rebound's actually slightly better in this deck though, but just because of the reach it gives you bouncing back your Tendrils or your Mind Society or your Grape Shot in your finishing chain. I will say I use this card on myself 9 times out of 10. The backup benefit of this card is being able to hard counter anything for 2 back to hand and then still cantrip out to not lose any business. Like, this is seriously one of the best cards in the deck. You can never cut Remand from this build ever. Is Signet, Dimir Signet, Talisman of Dominance, Grim Monolith. Not very exciting, but we need mana for this deck to function. There's a very low land count. So when you're looking at mana sources, you got to look at these converted mana cost 2 or less rocks. You got to look at all your lands, and then you got to look at your cheap draw spells and how quickly you're going to be able to wheel out or get to your 5 or your 6 based on those sources, and say how often am I going to hit to where I don't hit a turn or 2 where I'm sitting in top deck in Whiffzilla land. And you got to play mana, or you got to play more lands. And you don't want to play more lands, you want to play mana. The Ethereum Sculptor, in addition, makes these 1-for-1 tappers, meaning pretty much that you can cast them for free storm the same way you would a 0-drop once you've dropped Ethereum Sculptor. It's one of the reasons I really like him. So he is kind of a little mana accelerator in his own. Grim Monolith is slightly better. Very similar to the Mana Vault, but cost 2, so not quite as good. Always will net you more mana than it costs. So good to hit post Ad Nauseam, good to hit on a giant draw spell, good to have in your opening hand to cast those spells. So good at every stage of what we're trying to do here. Goblin Electromancer may be even better with the number of spells we have in this deck, regardless of the fact that a lot of them cost 1. Being able to cast our big spells at 1 less is really the most important thing, and the fact that on our win turn this guy can literally be like a giant ritual, tapping for 4, 5, 6, God knows how much mana by the end, makes him fairly insane. He's a very good part of our red splash here. Cabal Ritual is slightly better. Cabal Ritual will always net you mana, will always fix you black to cast your Ad Nauseam or your Tendrils, or fuck even a Grim Tutor if you're in a pinch. But in addition, when you've hit your threshold, that is 5 skulls on this card. 1 colorless, 1 black, 5 skulls. So, half a Soul Ring, and the land that wasn't a subtyping island tapping for black, and now you're already at 5 mana with all your high tide lands and shit open. Sign me up. Impulse is incredibly strong card quality. It lets you look at top 4, which is really good. It's instant, so you can hold up a counter spell or something and pass out with it. It's just incredibly, incredibly strong. The card quality it gives you at 2 is better than trying to play a tutor at 4. It's faster. It lets you craft your hand quickly. Also a card that, with the card I mentioned a second ago, like Goblin Electromancer, little cards like these that cost a 1 extra colorless, when you get a little synergies like that, they just become insane, because at 1 mana, Impulse is like way better than Ponder. Like 1 mana Impulse is insane. Still doesn't quite hold anything up to a Dark Confidant. And Dark Confidant is similar to Night's Whisper here, which I do not play currently. But Dark Confidant is better because it's very easy to drop in turn 1 with our mana accelerants in the form of Crow Mox, Mox Diamond, Lotus Petal, Mana Crypt, things of that nature that will let us cast him turn 1. And considering we still think we're going to play on average 4 or 5 turns, even casting him turn 2, this guy is going to draw us 3 to 4 cards for 2 mana. In addition, we get a nice little body that sits there and can whack people and lower our storm count, I guess. But really, it's just that he comes out and will get you immediate card advantage, and he only costs 2. I guess he's not the best top deck turn 4 or 5. But other than that, I would love seeing him in my opening hand most times. It gives you a little more gas so that you will draw into that extra counter spell or extra mana source to hold it open, so that when you make that big play on your critical turn a couple turns later, you have that 1 extra card that lets you answer the player who had held back to stop you or something of that nature. Very, very strong card. Night's Whisper is good too, because you get the value right away. But Dark Confidant is a little bit better. Actually, it's a lot of bit better. The grindier the game, like the harder the game is, the better Dark Confidant actually gets for you. He's doing what your Ad Nauseam would do, just slower. So it's not like it goes against your Ad Nauseam or anything like that, because you're just getting the cards faster. So who cares? Limdul's Vault is okay tutor. I don't like the life loss in this deck because of the Ad Nauseam. This is not quite the same as Dark Confidant, but it's a 2 mana Vamp tutor that lets you stack even more cards and gets around Stranglehold effects and things of that nature. And we want to be playing max converted mana cost 1 and 2 tutors that get things that are good, and this gets any card. So I don't think I can not play this card. Merchant Scroll is slightly better. You will want to get High Tide or Turnabout nearly every game. If you don't, you've got Mana Drain, you've got Cyclonic Rift. Merchant Scroll has some of the best selection of any tutor in this entire deck. It is blue Demonic Tutor. I mean, you cannot get mana rocks. Demonic Tutor thus is slightly better. I don't think I need to talk much about Demonic Tutor. It's the same as Vamp Tutor and Imperial Seal, but you can't play a turn 1. You don't lose a card, which means you get a free top deck. Just a card you play in every deck that's black. The card is broken. I mean, cast it once to go get your kill card, play your kill card and get a Yogg Will, cast your Yogg Will, cast it again to get phase 2 kill card, go, oh look, you just won game with Demonic Tutor. I mean, probably the best card in most decks are these 2 cards. Best card in black decks are these 2 cards. They are better than Soul Ring. They are better than Mana Crypt. Those are the next best cards, but these are the best cards in black deck, or these 2 cards. These are the best 2 legal cards in the entire format, in my opinion, actually. I think I can say that these are probably the 2 strongest cards in the entire format. I don't think this card is better. This card is really good. Maybe it's better, but just because of the nature of the format, I think these 2 cards are actually stronger. And if you're not playing them in these colors, then you just can't afford them or something. There's no deck that I would think I would ever not want to play these cards in. I don't care if my strategy was to lock out tutoring. I would still play these 2 cards. Grape Shot's on the bottom though because it's very, very good. One of the reasons you would splash red. Having an additional out to winning is very, very strong. In addition, it can remove problem permanents. If you have to bin your tendrils early or lose it to a graveyard hate spell, it gives you a nice backup. If you had to do a mini tendrils early in the game to not die when you whiffed, it'll be what you use on your main kill turn 2 turns later or the next turn. Very, very strong card. One of the first cards you should add to your deck when you start to splash red straight from black-blue. Seething Song is just a giant ritual. It's kind of a nice benefit of playing red because it's a ritual that nets you 2. Only costs 1 red, gives you tons of colored, so you can feed your mana artifacts into this and get tons of colored red and never have to tap for red with any of your other lands again on turn. Frantic Search, top deck manipulator, turns the top deck tutors into hand, and a High Tide tech card that acts as a giant mana ritual. I mean, this card literally does it all. Very, very good. Can be used in the early game just to dig when you have a couple cards you don't want. Kind of the same vein as when you're dumping something with a Brainstorm. Strong after ad nauseum because it will let you color fix even if you don't get a High Tide. Just turn your colorless mana into colored so you can cast your tutors to go win. Pretty much strong in every phase of the strategy. Windfall, insanely powerful. Admittedly weaker than Wheel or Time Twister in the early phases of the game because people's hands can easily drop to 5 or 6, making this net you 2 less cards, which, let's be honest, that's like an Ancestral Recall less cards. So yes, it is significantly weaker than Wheel of Fortune in those kind of situations. But what it does do, the same as Wheel that Twister doesn't, which is incredibly important, is it actually dumps cards into your graveyard. So anything you didn't want to use yet, say a Tendrils or a Grape Shot, or maybe even a Mind's Desire, that the way you have to play your hand out, you have to bend them. It sets you up to be able to finish people with those same cards. That's probably the reason we hate Graveyard Hate, because it's very good to fill our graveyard in this spell-based deck, because Yawgmoth's Will is very, very, very common to finish a game. So is Past in Flames. That's one of the reasons we even splash red, is to get to play the second Yawgmoth's Will in Past in Flames. And to get to play an extra wheel. Like I said before, I can feel the difference not having a Time Twister in this list because it's online. Wheel of Fortune is actually better. Wheel of Fortune will always draw 7. It will always discard hands. That is incredible. You can crack LED, this is insane. I do that in Classic all the time. It's probably the dumbest thing you can do I've ever seen. This lets you get pure value off all the mana rocks and little cards and stuff like that, and lets you use your proactive removal like your Vandal Blast or your REB really quickly and get a bunch of value out, and then bam, you wheel into brand new hand, card advantage. And now at this point, since you're up in these mana sources, your tutors can just go hit your Haymaker win spells right now. These things lead you into straight wins. You look like you're riffing, you get out of Mind Over Matter, something like this. This will just feed you mana. This will give you anything you need, and it will give you 7 of them. And what you need is cards. Grim Tutor probably is not as good as Wheel. I don't know if I completely stacked this in the right order, but Grim Tutor is still very strong. I think I just want to put the tutors next to each other. Grim Tutor, it's playable. I don't play Diabolic Tutor because it's not playable, I don't really feel like here. Grim Tutor is a fair tutor in my opinion. 3 damage, 3 mana. This is where a tutor should be, and I don't think it's broken. I think it's good. People should be playing it, but it's the second black cost is significant. If this was 2 in a black, it would be significantly stronger, but it is not. Because of cards like Soul Ring. But it's very, very, very good because you want to have high tutor density. This is a 2-hand tutor. 3 makes it so you're not at a mana cost where you have to be grabbing your big mana draw or win spell right away. You can still fit it in to grab something post ad nauseum and still be able to untap, and especially when you cast your ad nauseum at instant speed, because at 3 you're still good because you're probably dropping at least a 6. You're going to get at least 1 or 2 accelerations, right? So that's 7 or 8 right there. So you're easily going to be able to cast your turnabout behind it. Intuition is actually slightly better, mainly because of the card beneath it. With Yawgmoth's Will, with Intuition, you would just grab tutors 9 times out of 10. I mean, it's one of those cards that when you're playing the game, you'll see what to grab. Like, It's easy to trick people with it. It's easy to pick a pile where you literally cannot lose. It's easy to just pile tutors and then go grab Yawgmoth's Will and win. If you already have a tutors, it's easy to just go grab your High Tide Turnabout combo, plus maybe an extra tutor like Demonic, and then use your mystical tutor that you're already holding in your hand to put Yawgwill on top of your deck, and then just go cast all those cards you lose. It's really broken in this deck. It's a pretty broken card here. I think if you axed these other broken cards, it would be much less broken. But because it lets you just grab all of them, it's super broken. And then that card grabs the other more broken card, and then you just use all of them at once, and everyone loses. So Intuition is very, very strong tutor. Never cut. Still not as good as Yawgwind. Yawgwind wins the game in this deck. Everything in this deck is good with Yawgmoth's Will. Almost all of it produces mana. Most of it has an efficient cost. There's tons of things that cost 0. There's tons of ways to recast your spells. And doing all this gives you the massive Storm Count. This is the card that you benefit from, these wheels and these windfalls. This is your payout. When you cast this, it is Yawgwind. You will win in some way on that turn, or put yourself in a position where no one else will a couple turns later. In 4-drop, our weakest slot is Factor Fiction, but still incredibly strong. Instant speed card advantage. You get selection upon it. It's mostly colorless in cost, so you can feed almost any kind of mana to this spell. It'll always feed your Yard for a Past in Flames or a Yawgwill. Solid card. I would say this is probably the placeholder for Time Twister at the moment, though you could cut something else. I mean, you could cut a Crypt or a Vandal Blast or an REB or a Spell. There's lots of things you could cut. It doesn't, muddle. You could cut whatever you want for Time Twister. Just cut something. Probably be Factor Fiction. Probably not. I don't know. It doesn't really matter as long as you play it. I don't know what I'm going to cut it for here online yet, but I think my offline list, I'm trying to remember what it does not run. I think it may be the Factor Fiction because I don't know where to put my foil, though I almost want to say it's not. I almost want to say I cut, I can't remember what I cut. I cut something, because no, I think it's one of the red cards. Maybe it's maybe it is the Vandal Blast. Or I know I play the Tormod's Crypt in paper because I have lots of other people playing similar decks. I know I play the Vandal Blast. I know I play the REB. I want to say I never tested the Goblin Electromancer. Maybe online I didn't have that in foil. But it might be the Factor Fiction. That's kind of irrelevant anyway. Past in Flames gives you a second Yawgmoth's Will. Yawgmoth's Will is one of the best cards in the deck. This is a reason to splash red. This card is insanely good. I still remember the thread where the dude said if you wanted to answer Vampiric Tutor, you would play Codex Shredder. And the one guy said he'd put Jin-Gitaxias on top because then he'd mill it and he would reanimate it and kill everyone. And the guy said, well, what if they don't? Or something along those lines. Well, they probably definitely would. I can't see any position where they're like, oh, he probably wants to go get his reanimate card, so I'm just going to let him tutor. But if you put a Past in Flames on top, it doesn't matter. You put it in the hand, then you get to cast it for 4 and you win. You dump it into my graveyard, I get an extra card, I cast it for 5 and I still win. So the correct answer is you put Past in Flames on top of your deck. And then you get to cast your Vampiric Tutor again, see what they do about that. Oh look, they gave you the Past in Flames, so you Past in Flames again and you get to cast another card. But still not as good as Turnabout because of how unique it is in the deck. This is our High Tide combo engine. We will cast this multiple times on our turn, lots of times to win. You will see this card cast, and when you do, you know that you're pretty much have already lost. Though not as important as the main kill card in the deck was Tendrils. Tendrils costing twice as much mana as Grapeshot, but also giving you twice as much Storm. Since we have removed Tidespread Tyrant because pretty much he was win more, when you had enough mana to make him work, you probably would have won with something else. In addition, he made you hit on ad nauseum. You stop hitting on ad nauseum at higher numbers if you're afraid to hit him. It's nice to have an infinite outlet and an answer to some niche cards, like I said, the deck hate cards, but it doesn't make you win enough more games to play a card that's just not good most of the time. So Tendrils is the main kill condition in this deck, and we don't want it to get exiled by Graveyard Hate. We do not want someone to steal it with the a frickin' Praetor's Grasp and hide it from us. We don't want it extracted from our deck turn 1. We want to have our Tendrils of Agony intact because we're going to be killing people with it. We're going to cast it 4 times on our turn after building up 40 frickin' Storm, and we're going to kill everybody. The Lotus seems a little odd. It is a off-curve mana accelerator. But the thing is, it taps for colored mana. 3 of it. It has a net cost of 2 on turn. It can protect itself with any counter spell in our entire suite because it can cast all of them. It can be fed into a wheel for massive value, or a windfall, or a time twister, which you can't see right now. Like I said, I can feel not having this card. It hurts my soul a little bit. Or a Grim Tutor, which your Grim Tutor can go into your Force of Will to cover your next big card, or it can get you your reach. You know, just super, super, super strong. Really good with the Mind Over Matter. Will let you have just a couple cards in your hand, pitch to get massive amounts of mana so that you, even with just a few cards, can find a line to victory. You know, maybe that's 2 into a Recurring Insight because you wheeled earlier on turn and you're going to be drawing 7, and then you're going to be feeding Mind Over Matter. You know, every one of your cards can be pitched to become Black Lotus in your hand. That seems fairly good to me. Like I said with the Future Sight, a combo card that also constantly gives you gas. The same type of card as the Wheel. If you get it in play and you pass, you should be winning with this card. Future Sight combo is one of the cheapest, easiest ways to win. And you know, you'll start with something like top and you'll see this card. And you'll, just with the Future in the top, I mean, it gives you an insane amount of advantage. It must be answered. Then they use their cards to answer it, and you're already so far ahead that you're ready to win and you have backup. It's not quite as good though as Force of Will. Part of the reason Force of Will is so strong is we end up cutting the misdirection. This is a purely curved cut. I did not like getting hit for 5 with my Ad Nauseam for a card that 50% of the time could not counter the spell that I wanted it to. Yes, it was nice that it cost 0, but yes, it was nice that it countered counter spells. But for the fact that I had to pitch a card, it sometimes did not get what I wanted it to, and would still poke me for 5 on my Ad Nauseam, not letting me hit as hard, and just eventually pissed me off too much. So I think that's where I added the REB, was for the misdirection, because the hitting for 1 is much better, and it hit just as many relevant, if not more, targets. But Force of Will, on the other hand, hits everything. Force of Will I play in every deck. We're incredibly blue skewed. We'll never not be able to pitch our Force of Will. It covers a massively strong big draw plays and finishing plays, and any point in the time when we make our one move where we become vulnerable, Force of Will is the card that if they have their answer, maybe their own Force of Will or something like of that nature, it's the card that says, well, I was going to win and you were going to stop me, but I had a Force of Will, so I still get to win anyway. Yeah. The only card better in the 5-drop slot than Force of Will is the Ad Nauseam. We've talked about it a lot. It's your main tutor target. It's the easiest way to win. If no one knows what you're playing, it's definitely the best way to win. If you go into an unknown meta and pull in Ad Nauseam, especially with a black tutor where they don't get to see that's what you pulled, or you open-hand it, even grosser, open-hand it with a mana accelerator. This is when the deck kills super fast. You open-hand your Ad Nauseam and you get any kind of mana acceleration. It's like as soon as you can cast it, you can just win. You can pass into it, watch them tap down. You can choose to cast it on turn and just get value. You can play the card 10 million different ways. There's almost no way to play it wrong, and the deck built around it. I mean, you just cast it and win. I don't know how else to explain this card. If you fuck the lineup afterwards, then you fuck the lineup. But this card makes it so you should always win. Mind Over Matter here maybe could be higher than Recurring Insight, I don't know. It's the card that when you've casted Ad Nauseam, you just resolve this and you win because you have infinite mana battery after this. I don't know what else you could say. If you put this in play whenever you wheel, or you're on a high tide, or you time spiral out, or you do anything of that, like every card in your hand, much like the LED, can just become value. I mean, if you have another draw spell and you want to say, hey, this might get countered, you can hold on to that and bend the rest. I think I showed that in my last game when I held the Windfall, bend everything else for value, and then spiraled out because I knew my next hand I was going to have double high tide mana on turn, and then I ended up going off. It's the kind of card that, like, if you can resolve it and then you get cards, you just kill everyone. Like flipping this and this often ad nauseum. Like this is a kill, because if you can resolve this, you're already going to be at 6, like if you casted at instant speed, right? Now you're going to get to draw 5, 7 more cards, which at worst is going to be 5, 7 more mana. You've dug 25 or something cards into this pile. You're going to have hit a tutor. You're going to have hit mana. You're going to kill them. And you don't even need the mana cards anymore because you hit the Mind Over Matter. The mana cards are just so you can drop them first and hold up a counter if they had some kind of weird answer to your Mind Over Matter. And considering, you might be afraid, let's say someone represents a Corrosive Grip, but they might not have had the counter spell. You can play this whole priority and then put untapped triggers on your lands like 6 times for every land you're not going to cast in your hand. And then if someone K-grips it, you're like, sweet, well, I already gained all the fucking mana I needed off resolving this. I had my High Tide out, I just made 20 mana. You try to kill my Mind Over Matter, that's fine. I don't get to respond to your K-grip and stop it, but I get to untap for zillions of mana and still win, so I don't care. Recurring Insight is like ad nauseum. It's like a fair ad nauseum. It costs 6 and it's only sorcery speed, and you don't get to draw like 20 cards. You get to draw like between 14 and I'll say 8 maybe is the low end for the